Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping headfirst into let's just say challenging work of philosopher Slavoj Žižek. We're going to try and unpack a huge question. In our modern world, what does it actually mean to believe in something? You know, we hear all the time that we live in this cynical age. We're all supposed to be in on the joke, right? We see how the system works. But here's Žižek's big idea. Even when we think we're being cynical, our beliefs are actually working overtime, and they're often propping up the very systems we love to criticize. And to really see what he means, let's start with one of his most famous and, let's be honest, kind of wild critiques. This weird, strange partnership between Eastern spirituality and Western capitalism. So you look at these two things, and they seem like total opposites, right? On one side, you have the crazy, nonstop pressure of your job, the stress, the deadlines, the feeling that you always have to be doing more. And on the other, you have this promise of inner peace, of mindful calm, of just letting go. How can these two possibly coexist? Well, according to Žižek, this isn't a bug, it's a feature. See, this mindset of mindful detachment, it doesn't actually challenge the system. What it does is it lets you endure the chaos of capitalism and still stay sane. It's kind of the perfect trick. You can be fully involved in the madness, but feel like you're not really a part of it. And this is where it gets really interesting. This whole thing functions as what Žižek calls an ideological fetish. Okay, so what does that mean? It means we know, rationally, the truth of our stressful lives. We're not stupid, but we hang on to this idea, this fetish of inner peace, so we don't have to feel the full weight of it all. It's the little lie that lets us keep living a big, unbearable truth. All right, so moving on from Buddhism, Žižek sees the exact same kind of ideological escape hatch in the way we think about technology, especially the whole promise of the digital world. So to get what he's saying here, you have to know a little bit about this ancient religious idea called Gnosticism. The Gnostics basically believe that this physical world we live in, it's a mistake, a prison. And our true self, this kind of divine spark, is trapped inside our bodies. And the whole point is to try and escape. And this is where Žižek's point really clicks. Think about it. The dream of uploading your consciousness, of living in some kind of perfect virtual reality. For Žižek, that's just a high-tech sci-fi version of that old Gnostic fantasy. It's the ultimate escape plan from our physical bodies. I mean, just imagine what that fantasy is selling us. A world where we become pure information. No more messy biology, no sickness, no getting old. A clean break from everything complicated and difficult about having a real physical body. Which, of course, brings us to the most important question of all. If all these ideologies are just these elaborate escape plans, then what's the prison? What is this messy, uncomfortable truth about ourselves that we are so desperate to get away from? Okay, to answer that, we have to go with Žižek to some pretty weird and uncomfortable places. He leans on psychoanalysis to argue that we have to face the raw, messy core of what we are, what some philosophers call the real. He starts with the philosopher Hegel, who had this idea that if you could somehow take your innermost self and put it on the outside, it wouldn't look like some beautiful, pure soul. Nope. It would just be this raw, dark, formless thing. Like a black stone. It's the stuff of us before we apply any words or meaning to it. Now, Žižek, being Žižek, gives this a much blunter name. He calls it the anal object. Yeah, it's a provocative term, for sure, but the idea behind it is actually pretty profound. It's about the very first piece of our inside, that formless inner core that we make outside. So here's the absolute key. He says our shame around this stuff isn't really about hygiene. It's because in this thing, we come face to face with the raw, unformed intimacy of our own being. This is the messy real, with a capital R, of our existence that all those fancy ideologies, from mindfulness to cyberspace, are designed to help us clean up, manage, or just run away from. So, okay. If our beliefs and our fantasies are really just these sophisticated ways of coping with the system and our own messy reality, what does an authentic break from all that even look like for Žižek? This is where he talks about a return to Lenin. And look, this is super important. Let's be really clear here. He is not saying we should go back to Soviet-style communism. Not at all. What he's interested in is Lenin as a figure, someone who was willing to make a decisive, system-shattering move. So, for Žižek, a truly authentic political act isn't about finding a nice, safe middle ground. It's about making a radical choice and then fully, completely accepting all the consequences, no matter how messy or cruel or unpleasant they might be. It's about seeing it through to the absolute end. And you can really see the contrast he's drawing here. On one side, you have what he criticizes as the liberal leftist position. This is the person who wants a revolution, but when it comes to the actual messy price of it, they back away. They want to keep their hands clean. And on the other side, you have the Leninist gesture. This is the person who is not afraid to do the necessary dirty work to make their vision a reality. So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, first, you have to reject those easy, pragmatic compromises. Then, you adopt a totally radical, uncompromising position. And your goal isn't just to win within the current rules. It's to intervene in a way that completely changes the rules of the game itself. And finally, you take full responsibility for whatever happens next. And this is the final, provocative idea that Žižek leaves us with. In a world that is just saturated with these comfortable ideologies that help us feel good and avoid hard truths, is the only truly authentic move a cruel one? Is the only real way to change things to fully embrace the uncomfortable, messy, and maybe even brutal consequences of a real revolution? It's a really challenging thought, and maybe a pretty unsettling one to leave you with.